So thank you very much for inviting me. And well, basically, I'm the ambassador of the Kingdom of Morocco, and this is my 5th year. And before that, my background is academic. I was a professor at Yale University. And then when I went back to Morocco about 10 years ago, I was a member of the parliament. So these are the things that actually shape what I do and what I intend to do in the future. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I thought that I would be the last speaker on the panel, but anyway, I can start, no problem. I think you raised very important questions. And you said something about, this idea of, there is this troubling reference of always going back to colonialism as one of the reasons to blame for the setback for all types of problems in Africa. But I think it's about time. I mean, like, it's more than 1 century now that since the Berlin Conference that divided Africa into different countries, divided countries, and as you put it, fragmented countries. So the thing that rather than fragmented, I would use the word bordered Africa, because borders really still continue. Actually, sometimes, even the empire opened its borders within, whether you talk about North Africa or East Africa or different parts, regions of Africa. Borders still like a big issue. And if you talk about the dreams that we put on the AFC, FTA, one of the first challenges is how to open borders. And now we're ready. Do we have the political will to do that? But I think it's about time to really use this value of self-criticism to blame ourselves rather than keep blaming colonial powers. That's history that happened, unfortunately, but it's about time. That does not exclude our share now in the present of really doing what we should do for the continent. So this theme, of course, is very, very interesting for diplomats, because if you think about, sometimes when you think about trade, it's not a new concept when you talk about diplomacy, because trade was the main reason why diplomatic missions were established. If you go back to the ancient times of the Phoenician, already the friendly relations were necessary in order to do trade. That's actually the first time that we thought about trade. And from the Moroccan perspective, we started actually aware of it. As early as the 14th century, Morocco started having diplomatic missions in Europe, particularly, and that's actually to protect whatever that trade exists at that time. So, I represent a country that is actually, this theme is very important because Morocco, as you know, has a strategic location, which makes it very attractive to various economic powers. Morocco is, as we try to sort of map it, is some sort of a bridge, solid one, or an exciting dynamic bridge between East and West, which is the Middle East and Americas, and between South and North, Africa and Europe. And also in order to do trade, in order to do any kind of economic development, you need stability. And Morocco is an old nation going back to 12th century. It's at least as old as 12 centuries. And that actually sort of made Morocco really some sort of a hub in the world, especially on the Mediterranean, also on the Atlantic. So, but of course, we're one of the really supporters of the FTA, but we did not stop just at that kind of support. We started actually the talk started about the importance of AFC, FTA. Morocco started to set up the necessary tools and structures to make it achievable. So first I will start with the political will, and that political will is expressed by His Majesty's approach, the approach that is actually well known now in Africa, called South-South cooperation. And I know there was talk about South-South cooperation before, but it was rather a rhetoric during the Cold War. But now South-South cooperation, according to His Majesty, is not just politics, it is a policy. So what that means is that we have to accompany it with by setting up different structures economically, socially, and all sectors, private, public. And just a reminder, Morocco over the past 3 years signed at least like more than 1,000 bilateral treaties with our African partners. And also we did something that is very exciting, and I don't know what was done somewhere else, is we started Pan-Africanizing, the term Pan-African. Pan-Africanizing our institutions. It's not enough to just sort of keep them within the national framework, but we started to add this dimension of Pan-Africanism to our big institutions. And I would start here with the well-known OCP group, which is now, there is the OCP Africa group, or OCP Group Africa. And that's very important because OCP is the world's largest producer of fertilizers. So, and the issue of food security continues to be very challenging in Africa. So OCP comes here, and then we had a planned $5 billion project in Ethiopia. Half of it was already allocated, and we did the same projects also in Ghana and Nigeria. And there are many other companies, and also we started actually sort of, you heard maybe about these Pan-African projects regarding energy, and there is the pipeline, the Moroccan, the Moroccan-Nigerian gas pipeline that would connect Nigeria all the way to Morocco, supplying gas and then to Europe. So these are big projects that are going to be really important for the free trade in Africa. And when it comes to East African community, and I always actually, when I'm asked to speak about the relationship between the two regions, unfortunately, we don't have a region because our borders with Algeria were closed in 1994. So we are trying to really sort of see where Moroccan investment and trade can really develop. And now we could actually be very proud that Morocco is the first African investor in West Africa, and the second African investor at the level of the continent, which is a very good thing that lead us to really sort of look not just in West Africa, but also in regions like East Africa. East Africa is important to us, and I always say this. Why? Because the economic products here, or trade in East Africa and trade in Morocco can be matched very easily, because it avoids this aggressive competition that's actually characteristic of many regional economic blocks like ECOWAS, COMESA, and so forth. Why? Because just think about East African community. Trade is sometimes challenged. Why? Because the countries of the East African community produce the same product, the same things, like coffee, tea. But if I take the example of Morocco, in Morocco, we drink tea and coffee at least 3 times a day, but we don't grow them, which makes us really like if you think about our economic relations, Morocco and East African community with Kenya, it means that it adds this added value of complementarity. And the most important other example that I would cite is also fertilizers. Kenya doesn't have fertilizers. Agriculture is really the backbone of the economy. And Morocco, as I said before, has fertilizers. So the question here, I'm just sort of jumping. If we talk about East African community, ECOWAS, COMESA, the question that I would ask later, is it going to be are they going to be alive after everybody signed or get into the AFCFTA? One, and then the challenges for me, of course, the challenges to be ready for the AFCFTA there is a big challenge of infrastructure. So we have been aware of this over the past 5 years, and we start just to give an example about the infrastructure in Morocco. The road infrastructure is doing very well. We have about more than 1,800 kilometers of highways, and we're trying to connect east of Morocco, which is the border with Algeria, all the way, like the highways, and go all the way to Agadir. And from Agadir, we have expressway. We're actually sort of already working on that to connect them to Mauritania. So this is a perfect example how you connect the Maghreb with West Africa. And the infrastructure too, we've been aware, and in addition to roads, we think that the ports are very important. And maybe you know that Tangimed, this big port on the Mediterranean, which is about just 12 miles away from Spain, is becoming really the international route for many trade traffic. And there's the ports, and there's also actually building another port on Dakhla in the Sahara, and that is going to, it's called the Atlantic port of the Dakhla. So in addition to the Mediterranean, we're going to have this port on the Atlantic coast. It will be one of the biggest on the African Atlantic coast. And you know, also, when you talk about food security, I talked of the OCP fertilizers, and even if the OCP is not just a seller of fertilizer, but it's an institution that is research. And here the importance of preparing the young generation to accept this dream, or to really engage or to commit to it, AFC, FTA, by really education. And you know, Morocco has been invested in this for a long time, and we receive 11,000 students from Africa annually, and 10,000 of them have scholarships, because we trade. We are not going to just think about trade of sort of taking one product, one good from one place to another, but there should be a transfer of knowledge. There should be an exchange, academic treaties between all our universities to prepare the young generation. And this is also in terms of trade, this kind of mobility is going to be a transfer of knowledge from one corner from one region of Africa to another. So education, I said, is very important. Morocco also started actually presenting many offers of tax reliefs and tax facilities or tax exemptions. If you think about the East African community, again, most of the countries actually, when you import from here, you don't pay taxes, you just pay the VAT, which encourages a lot of Moroccan traders to actually come to this region, and especially now within, again, what I call the South-South cooperation, because it gives priority to our African partners. Going back again to this idea of colonialism, and we all ask this question of autonomy, our benchmarking, unfortunately, has been so far all the time between South and North. But I think this is the time, since we have some successful experiences and examples in Africa, this is the time to really shift and have an intra-African benchmarking. It's easier psychologically for a country to just ask the question, if my neighbor did it, so I can do it too, because we underwent the same sociological and historical conditions. And if one of us is successful, the other is going to be. So the African benchmarking is very, very interesting. And then when we talk about trade, through experience, I see like Moroccans trading here coming to East Africa, there is still the challenge of governance. Of course, this is something that we need to fix. And legislation, we need strong legislations to protect investors and traders if we really want to make the AFC, FTA successful. So I go back to the same thing that I raised as a question about borders. So I think our dream or our objective, the urgent objective, should be to work together to transform borders, all types of borders, into economic bridges. And we are trying to do that, as I said. We did it in the east of Morocco. We are doing it in the Sahara, turning the Sahara into a hub, economic hub. Why? Because the Sahel is a troubled region, and I think through economic development, we really sort of answer too many questions of instability and of violence and terrorism and so forth. So again, and I hope that this is the kind of questions that we should really focus on. I mean, it's a little bit of a shame all the time we are talking about these big continental Pan-African projects, and yet you can see many countries, their borders are closed with each other. Basically, in many conferences in Africa, we are not looking for arguments like new things. We just need, as Ms. Juliet said, the key word should be implementation. We sometimes turn big projects into rhetorical facts afterwards, and we don't implement them. I think that all countries need to really sit down seriously and try to fix this problem of implementing. We have excellent thoughts, innovative, one. Two, I think we also have to tap in our youth and also our skilled African people. I forgot to actually mention the challenges for this big project of AFCTA is still the skilled people. We have the big problem, the serious problem of brain drain. We are talking the paradox. Most of the world sometimes is worried about the illegal migrants coming from Africa, But nobody is actually taking the time to see the serious cost of brain drain, how our skilled people, they spend some of the time, they educated, states spend a lot on them, on their education, primary education, secondary education, and then all of a sudden, when you need them, they are no longer there. I think all these challenges should be fixed together to give us like faith and trust in the free trade agreement in Africa. Yes, I think Nkrumah pronounced this dream in Casablanca in 1961, the famous Casablanca bloc. Of course, if we compare the 60s to now, we can say that there is a big evolution of the African consciousness first. Second, very important, is that we are free of the colonial complex. Three, now Africa is knowing emerging economies all over the continent, which means that we have all the means it takes to really be unified, be strong as a continent. We just need to believe in ourselves.